Welcome into Broncos Weekend, everybody. I'm Matt Boyer. Alexis Perry, Ryan Harris, and Voice of the Fan will be along in just a moment. But as always in studio, we start with the Hall of Famer, Steve Atwater. Steve, how we feeling?
Feeling good, Matt. And I'm going to feel even better after I get these muscles right by lifting all this snow that's coming.
Bend the knees, Steve. Don't throw out the back this weekend, okay?
I got you.
All right. Free agency, Steve, is also coming up quick, just like the snowstorm, all right? And I want to bring up something that Vic Fangio said last week. He said there's two off seasons. One is when you add free agents and guys through the draft. The other off season facing the Broncos this year is adding their own players back, getting guys healthy, adding to that 2021 roster. So I want to take a look at a couple of guys I want to focus on today, adding those guys back. Which of the Broncos' injured players, by adding them back to the 2021 roster, will have the biggest impact? And I want to start with number 14.
Yes.
The Pro Bowler.
You got to start there.
Cortland Sutton.
Yes.
All right. When you think about what Sutton would add to that 2021 roster and bringing him back, what's your take? What do you see as the ceiling for the Broncos, or how does he help?
Cortland Sutton is a vital part of this offense. I mean, the big plays that he makes, the leadership, his practice habits, everything is amazing. This guy is an amazing human being, an amazing football player, and we missed that last year. Having him back in the fold is going to be huge because sometimes when Drew Lock, a little bit in a pickle, he just throw it up to Cortland Sutton. He can go up and get it over anybody.
Mm-hmm.
I put my money on Cortland Sutton, the 90-10 versus that 50-50 ball.
He played at a Pro Bowl level, Steve, in 2019 with 3 different guys throwing him the football. That was pretty incredible. Now, George Paton said something earlier this week on Behind the Broncos that I thought was interesting. He said that when the Vikings faced the Broncos in 2019, Sutton was the focus their entire week. And he still went out and caught 5 balls for 113 yards and dropped a dime to Tim Patrick, okay? I think Sutton's ability to preoccupy opponents on that Tuesday, Wednesday. Vic Fangio loves to mention how football games are won early in the week. They're not won necessarily on game day. It's the work that you put in earlier in the week that leads to wins. If Cortland Sutton is preoccupying a defensive coordinator's thinking, if he's living rent-free in a D coordinator's head on Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, that's less time you have to focus on Noah Fant, Jerry Jeudy, Melvin Gordon. So to me, Sutton's value is measured in wins, not necessarily touchdowns, but it's measured in wins. So I think he's got to be at the top of the list. Speaking of guys who can wreck games, Steve, Von Miller is the next guy on the list here. And look, full disclosure, we're taping this before Snowpocalypse, okay? So the situation, it's fluid with Von right now. I get it before free agency. We're seeing a lot of guys, a lot of veterans go free. Hopefully that's not the case with Von.
I'm hoping once we come back, everything will be just like it is right now. Von's still here. Everything's good.
Absolutely. Now, played 0 games in 2020 and 2019. The production wasn't where we expected it to be in 2019. Only 8 sacks. For me, if he can play that DeMarcus Ware role that we saw back in 2014 and 2015, and Chubb play that Von role, okay? Chubb being the guy who, might have the higher sack total, but Von is still preoccupying the attention of a defense. I think that can make him extremely effective still, even though that production has fallen off a little bit. What's your take?
I don't think so. I think that production is going to be there. I think he and Bradley Chubb. Bradley Chubb is going to be 100%. Von Miller, you saw what track Von was on at the start of the 2020 season. His mindset had changed. Those big thighs of his, man, nobody was going to be able to block. They couldn't block him in training camp. Nobody's going to be able to block him. And that's the Von Miller and Bradley Chubb that I want to see together. That's going to be, man, terrorizing offenses. Hey, once you get pressure on the quarterback, everything's easier from there. If you don't get pressure on the quarterback, though, hey, things can be tough all the way around.
The next guy we got to talk about, Steve, is a guy on the defensive side of the ball, Bryce Callahan. Now, Bryce, we hear it from fans all the time. They're frustrated because he just hasn't been on the field as much as they would like because he's been hurt. Durability is definitely his biggest knock. He's never played 16 games in an entire season. But Vic Fangio came out last week and said that Bryce Callahan was the best corner, no doubt, for the Broncos in 2020. So in thinking about that position and how thin they are, even if they go out and add a free agent and a draft pick at the corner spot, I think he still is going to play a vital role, being a versatile guy and a guy who knows the system. So you could make the case that he's the most important guy coming back. It's a thin case, but you could make it.
Yeah, Bryce Callahan is an amazing player. It has been a little bit frustrating. I'm sure it's frustrating for him as well. Probably more frustrating for him than it is for everyone else that he hasn't been able to stay on the field and be healthy. So I agree. I think we have to have another player at that position that can play at a high level that Bryce can play at. But, yeah, Bryce is going to be the starter if he's healthy. And I anticipate him coming back healthy, and I'm looking forward to him playing a full 16 games. He's an amazing player.
All right, Steve, let's talk about your guy. You're a charter member of the Albert O fan club. I get it.
And no fan.
And no fan.
Yeah.
Okay,
All
and
right,
no fan.
right.
So I'm going to cede the floor to you right now, okay? Albert O returning in 2021 healthy. What can that do for the Broncos?
It just opens up everything, especially if he and Noah Fant are on the field at the same time. When Albert O is on the field, he's a difference maker. And, you know, with he and Drew Lock having played together at the University of Missouri, Drew Lock has a comfort level with him. And especially in the red zone, he went to Albert O quite a bit. It was really surprising. And Albert O, being a rookie, he didn't come up with all those catches, but he was in the right position. He ran the right routes. He knew the plays. Man, he's the guy that, aside from Cortland Sutton, that I'm looking forward to being back out there, you know, making big plays, making big catches, blocking well. He's a big, strong guy, too. I think his ceiling is extremely high as well, man. I'm fired up.
Timing was a little bit off in that Patriots game, but he could have had 3 touchdown catches. I mean, they were looking his way a lot.
Yeah, and he normally comes down with those. He'll come down with, just like with Jerry Jeudy. His rookie year had a few drops there. Those are going to be cleaned up. I'm not worried about those guys. Those guys are going to be playmakers here in Denver for a long time.
If you're inside the 20, if you're a defensive coordinator, you got some decisions to make.
Right.
Because I don't know how they guard all those guys.
They can't. I guarantee you they can't, because there's not many safeties, let alone linebackers, that can cover Noah Fant or Albert O. Yeah. And if for some reason they stay in base defense and, you know, they're trying to cover those guys, it's not going to happen. They may have one good cover corner, good cover linebacker. They don't have to. Mm-mm. And it's going to be a beautiful thing. And with them being in this same offensive system the second year in a row, everything's just going to be better. So I'm really excited for this year, what we're going to do on the offensive side of the ball.
The most exciting news, Vic Fangio is saying all of those guys, the rehab, it's on track. Everybody's looking good. So a lot to look forward to, Broncos country, in 2021. We got to take a quick break, but when we come back on Broncos Weekend, the Colorado Sports Broadcaster of the Year and a Super Bowl 50 champ, Steve.
Yes, my man.
Ryan Harris. He is talking offensive line with you, plus some inside info on one of the names in the draft linked to the Broncos. Plus, Alexis Perry is back with Voice of the Fan. This time, hear how Super Bowl XXXII created a Broncos fan for life in Alabama, of all places. Broncos Weekend rolls on after the break. Broncos country, Ryan Harris is joining Atwater's A-Team this week. Steve is sitting down with Ryan this week to talk about the Broncos offensive line. Is this position group now the strength of the Broncos offense? Plus, Ryan gives us a name that Broncos fans might want to be familiar with come draft night.
All right, Ryan the Man Harris. Hey, man, thanks so much for joining me again. It's always a pleasure. You always have great conversation. Want to talk to you a little bit about Broncos offensive line. Now, this offseason, not much talk. I haven't heard much talk about offensive line. Are they set at that position right now?
Well, it's always great to join you, Steve. Always great to join the legend, the Hall of Famer himself. As it regards to the offensive line, I think a lot of that conversation has gone away because Juwan James is going to be a part of the Broncos moving forward. You know, that was the big question. And now with the depth that you have, with Calvin Anderson at tackle, as well as Garrett Bowles, you really are shored up, right? You've got Dalton Risner, and you've got, I love how Muti played towards the end of the year. So really they're looking at a guard maybe, right? So it's something where I think that the offensive line is pretty much a strength of the offense at this point, provided Juwan James can come back, play at a high level, and really help this team.
Now, which one of those positions do you think needs to see the biggest jump from last year?
I just think consistency is so important on the offensive line. You know, when I was at the Pittsburgh Steelers, they had guys who had played together for 5 years. And when you play with guys, one of the things that happens is when a safety does want to blitz, instead of giving away to the defense that it's a pass, you could just say, hey, Atwater, and you can just say a name and your teammate knows that's who you're going to pick up in the blitz. You don't have to say, hey, pick him up, or hey, we're over here. So you really cut down on the communication, your anticipation in the run game. I played next to Chris Cooper, who's now an assistant offensive line coach.
Yeah.
And I knew he liked the technique where he chopped the arm of the person on a backside of a run. Well, that meant that they would be lower for me to cut. So versus if he had stabbed them and I had to go higher and cut their knees kind of 2 yards into the defense. So that's how that consistency really helps teams on the offensive line. And the Broncos just haven't been able to have that between injuries and the Corona season. They now have an opportunity to get some consistency with that offensive line, and that will lead to production.
Yeah, I agree with you 100% on that. As a veteran, you dealt with the free agency process during your career. How would you approach this year's window with the salary caps? I'm thinking they're probably going to go down somewhat. What would you do? Would you take a one-year prove-it program, one-year prove-it deal as a free agent, or would you try to hold out in hopes of signing a more longer-term deal? What would you do if you were a free agent right now?
Well, the number one thing players want is security, but you and I know, Steve, that teams are going to use every excuse they can not to pay long-term and give that security. So you're going to see a lot of teams actually go out and say, hey, because of the salary cap, we can only offer you a one-year deal. Well, wow, that really didn't stop the Dallas Cowboys and Dak Prescott from signing a deal, right? But you are going to see a lot of one-year deals, a lot of players. And for me, the choice was always, do you want to win or do you want the money? And I always told my agent, I want to win because the money will take care of itself.
Right.
And as long as you kind of have that framework, whether it's a one-year deal or a 3-year deal, get your money if that's what you want, or go to a place that's going to help you win. And that way, hopefully you can set up that long-term security down the road. Okay,
now, inside linebacker, that may be a position that the Broncos target in this year's draft. Doing broadcasting for your alma mater, the Notre Dame. You guys have a linebacker there, Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah, and I hope I said that properly. And having broadcast several games, what's your scouting report on him?
Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah is absolutely fantastic. One of the best linebackers in the entire college football landscape. That's why he won the Nagurski Award. And what I loved about him is you go to the Clemson games that he was playing in, and especially the first one this past year, he really was so physical. He hit Travis Etienne, one of the best running backs in the country, and made him fumble the football. Got to the running back before the pitch, which is very hard to do. So I love Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah. He is tough. They actually had a physics professor at Notre Dame come down and set up through a formula why he's so powerful, why he's more powerful because of his speed and size. And he's really going to be a fantastic player for whoever picks him up.
So your stance is he's going to be a linebacker and not a safety.
Yeah, I believe he will be a linebacker. I know some greats like yourself consider him to be a safety, but to me, the work and the knowledge and experience of playing in between the tackles is really going to be something that allows Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah to flourish. And he does run downhill. And you got to remember too, Steve, when you're the best player on defense in college, rarely do you get to learn just one position. And that was Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah.
Keep up the great work, Ryan. And we'll have you on again soon. Thank you.
Thanks, Steve. Have a great one. Peace. Go Broncos.
Our thanks to Ryan Harris for taking some time with us this week. When we come back on Broncos Weekend, Alexis Perry is bringing us Voice of the Fan. Hear how a Super Bowl XXXII watch party produced one of the biggest fans in Broncos country, thousands of miles away in Alabama. That's next. Time now for Voice of the Fan, Broncos country. Alexis Perry has been bringing us your fan origin stories from across the globe. And today, we've got a special one. Alexis is chatting with Owen Whitehurst, a Broncos fan from Alabama who gained his citizenship in Broncos country on the night of Super Bowl XXXII.
Thanks a lot, Matt. Since starting this off-season edition of Broncos Weekend, I've gotten some really great messages from fans all around the world describing how they fell in love with the Denver Broncos. And I'm so happy we get to hear from another passionate fan today whose story had me smiling from ear to ear when I read it. Joining us from Indianapolis, Indiana, Owen Whitehurst. Owen, thanks for being here.
What's up, Owen?
Good to see you guys. I appreciate it.
Well, like I said, I absolutely loved reading your childhood story about your love affair with the Denver Broncos and how it began. And I really think the rest of the Broncos country will too. So take us back to January 25th, 1998, Super Bowl Sunday.
Super Bowl Sunday. I'm from East Limestone, Alabama. And as you know, there really isn't pro football there. The only colors that we know is crimson and white.
That's right.
That's it. So we have a Super Bowl party. All my classmates are invited. I'm stoked to be going, but none of us know anything about the NFL. So we get there, and his mom on the table in front of us has 32 hats. And on the right side are green and yellow hats, and on the left side, orange and blue. So every single kid, the only thing that we really knew about the NFL was Brett Favre, and none of us could even spell his name until we were like 30. And we knew the Dallas Cowboys because that was America's team, but they weren't playing. So everybody was grabbing the green and yellow hats. I don't know what made me go left. The only thing I knew being 8 years old was that orange and blue sweet tarts slap, and that's my favorite flavor. So I grabbed them. That's exactly.
You didn't want to follow the herd either, right?
I didn't want to follow the herd. I went against the grain. I had to do it. So I put the hat on. I'm cheering. I'm jacked up on sugar. I'm 8 years old. I'm screaming like a little girl every single time. Steve, you going in and just knocking down those passes. I remember on the 3rd and 6. You actually had me terrified whenever you went in for that hit late across the center on the wide receiver. I know you remember that. I was horrified at that moment. So glad you're okay, by the way.
Yeah, my wife and kids, they were the same way up in the stands, man. And looking at it, that was a little bit scary, but fortunately, I'm all right.
I'm glad to see you. So, but yeah, I sat there and just cheered them on the entire rest of the time and was yelling and screaming. Everybody was all sad, and they kept asking me, like, how'd you know the Broncos were going to win? And I honestly didn't know. I just knew that orange and blue sweet tart slapped, and I knew the Denver Broncos would too, and we won.
Oh, very nice. Now all of the great moments in the franchise history, what do you consider to be your favorite?
There's so many to count, to be completely honest with you. I mean, some of my favorite games, honestly, is when Tim Tebow was playing, just because of how exciting it was. All the fourth quarter comebacks, the overtimes, every game I was on the edge of my seat. But I got to say, probably the defining moment, just being an adult, watching Peyton Manning win Super Bowl 50 and Von Miller getting the strip sack. That's probably just being an adult and being able to watch it, because Super Bowls, as you know, they're hard to come by, and just being able to witness it both like as a child and seeing it as an adult was just phenomenal. So that's probably the highlight.
Owen, do you have any questions for the Hall of Famer?
Of course I do. So Mr. Atwater, again, it's a complete honor to meet you. Thank you so much for doing this. You're making a dream come true. So thank you.
Same here, Owen. It's my pleasure.
Oh, well, I appreciate it. I just do what I can. So one of the questions I want to ask you is, and you've probably heard this throughout your entire career, is you were like a linebacker playing safety. I mean, the skill set that you had in that era, but also I feel like it would transition perfectly into today's era. But your ability to stop the run, your ability to defend the pass, you were just all over the place. What skill set do you think you personally would translate to the NFL today?
Well, I would say more than anything, just, once I know who finally has the ball, whether it's the running back on a handoff or a tight end catching a short pass or, any pass, hey, just forget everything. Just full speed to the ball and to the whistle. When I was in college one year, I was running over to make a tackle, and I thought one of my teammates had the guy tackled, and I slowed down and stopped. And of course, the guy broke the tackle and ran in for a touchdown. And going over to the sidelines, man, my coaches, they were so ticked off at me. And so I made sure I never did that again. And, so I just got that habit in my head of, just going to the whistle and, just trying to bring everything I got. And then, getting a chance to learn from Dennis Smith, who I think one of the greatest safeties to play the game, man. That really helped me a lot too, to, try to not just run to the person, but actually try to run through them. So, that was it. Just the mentality of, hey, I want to make every tackle. I want to be in on every play.
That's perfect. And that's one of the things that I also noticed about your career and from hearing from your teammates when they do interviews, especially Terrell Davis, would always talk about how you made him a better player because you would go up to him after each and every play and tell him, like, hey, man, this is what tipped me off that you were going to run this direction. So your ability to just elevate even the offensive side of the ball by giving them tips and pointers, I think, is phenomenal for what you did for the Denver Broncos. So thank you for that.
Oh, man, thank you. And it was an honor, man. I played with so many great guys, and I was just passing on what was taught to me, man. And it really was a blessing.
All right, Owen. Seriously, thank you so much for joining us today and for loving Orange and Blue Sweet Tarts as much as you did back then as an 8-year-old. We're so happy that you are a proud member of Broncos country.
Yeah, thanks for joining us, Owen, man. I appreciate you. Got to give the Mile High salute. There we go.
Got to give it. I appreciate it, everyone. Thank you so much for having me on.
Thank you.
Back to you.
Thank you, Alexis, and a special thanks to Owen as well. Great to see how the Super Bowl XXXII ripple effect is still being felt all of these years later. That'll do it for us today on Broncos Weekend. Special thanks to Ryan Harris, Alexis Perry, and the Hall of Famer Steve Atwater. I'm Matt Boyer. So long, Broncos country. We will see you next week.